It's July 23rd, 2026. Welcome to the video, everybody. Hope you're doing great wherever you're watching from. New strikes from CENTCOM. They launched yesterday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And if you look and see what's going on, massive destruction to what looks like IRGC drone storage locations, massive explosions, and you can see the after effects. When it looks like that firework explosion, after effects of IRGC drone networks, underground networks with the IRGC posting hype videos, and then those exact drone networks being completely crushed. Also, the A-10 Thunderbolt, picture that thing being back in the fight, because we're going to talk about what a ground invasion would look like and what would be the best aircraft to support a ground invasion. Would that ground invasion be US troops? Would it be partner nations? With President Trump saying that there's other people who would do the ground engagements. So with all these new strikes like this one right here, massive fireballs erupting, hitting IRGC headquarters, it looks like there is a sustained campaign right now to knock out the command and control of Iran. And what does that mean? Well, when the command and control's gone, even with border locations being hit, with locations along the border of Iraq being hit as well, potential for IRGC hardliners trying to escape, leaders trying to escape, and the administration in the US in no uncertain terms is saying, no. Something big is coming to Iran. What could that be? Could that be an actual ground invasion? Well, the A-10 Thunderbolt would likely be at the top of the list of every ground commander in the entire region. 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, these extremely advanced units with the US Army, one of their main goals is strategic targeting. Actually understanding where the IRGC is, what their next move's gonna be, and hitting them before they can launch ballistic missiles. So they would be the prime ones to even be advisors when it comes to some sort of a ground invasion. But massive amounts of capability when it comes to Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, all these teams working together to potentially be advisors for whoever President Trump was talking about. But the best advisor of them all is going to be the GAU-8 Avenger, that spinning Gatling gun, 30 millimeter depleted uranium rounds, walking a line of IRGC vehicles off the face of the earth at 3,900 rounds per minute. And that sound of Bert, that's the last sound that these IRGC ground forces would hear. And right now, 11 nights into the most sustained air campaign since the opening, the White House is actively discussing whether it's time to hear the sound of the A-10 over Iranian soil, potentially protecting a ground invasion, with multiple plans being reported having been given to President Trump. And then Iran's foreign ministry spoke up, as they do. Esmail Baghai told reporters this week that Iran's leadership is, and I'm quoting this directly, counting down the minutes to welcome a US ground invasion. Well, sorry to tell you, it probably wouldn't just be, or might not even be at all, the United States. But that regime mouthpiece also went on national television and said the IRGC has been preparing for a land war for decades, which he's not wrong, claimed that Iran introduced a new missile to the theater overnight, and said the Iranians are hitting very hard and are prepared for a land war. So we're going to bring in some expertise on this. I'm actually bringing in Mike Baker from the President's Daily Brief. He does daily briefs that are presidential level for all the rest of us. So we're going to bring him in and talk to him about the actual potential for a ground invasion and what that might look like. And I'll link to the President's Daily Brief in the description.
You know, I've never been a big proponent of a ground invasion, but at the end of the day, the IRGC needs to know everything's on the table. And hopefully no ground invasion has to happen. I'm a big proponent of it not happening, but I think the threat of it happening, the credible threat of it happening, is important.
Yeah, I mean, I like here's what I think for what that's worth. Kharg Island is critical, right, to the revenue of Iran. And if you can think of a way to remove that, now you're talking about the sort of pressure that can actually end this regime, right? And it is complicated. I don't want to oversimplify it because there's a lot of moving parts there, right? If you impose the most severe economic sanctions, blockade, restrictions on the regime, obviously, yes, they're going to pass that pain down to the people because they don't care about the Iranian people. We've seen that time and time again. But, you know, we can remember that in the earlier part of this year, those protests, they started in part because of the economy. and for the most part, because of the economy.
So before we go too much further, I want to tell you about the strategy of warfare and how sometimes things aren't what meets the eye and why you have to adapt and adjust real time. And I cover stories just like this in my new book. It's at mabbook.com. But I was on a combat mission in Afghanistan, and the ground forces commander realized that there was a meeting happening between insurgents who were planning a VBED. That's a vehicle-borne IED that they were going to try to strike a joint compound with. So, working with the Joint Forces commander, we talked about just a little visit to that meeting. And here's what we ended up doing. So they wanted us to buzz the meeting while the insurgents were talking about actually planting that VBED in a vehicle and driving it towards a forward operating base. So we got the intel, and here's where all these things come together. The coordination of human intelligence, signals intelligence, knowing exactly where these insurgents are going to be at the exact time. I recount this exact story in my book, and we rolled in our F-15Es, and I'll save the main story for the book. Sometimes in warfare, you have to do things that might not be advertised or might not meet the eye, and that's exactly what you need to do when it comes to your personal life and professional life and to succeed at whatever you're up to. So go to mabbook.com because I include stories just like this from my time in combat, even some stories from flying on the Thunderbirds that I think you'll really enjoy. So when you go to mabbook.com, you can get a signed or an unsigned copy, but the signed copies, there's a limited amount. So go there right now if you want to pick up a signed copy, because once they're gone, they're gone. That's at mabbook.com. Thanks so much for the support with the book, guys. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
And that's what motivated people to get out, because they finally had enough. Now, then they got slaughtered by the thousands, so it makes it much more difficult to think, well, why don't they come back out on the street? They know why, right? Because that's what they're going to be facing. They don't have the guns, the IRGC does. But I guess a rambling way of saying that I think that the pressure points here in reality are more economic than munitions based. Right? I mean, I think you got to do it all. It's sort of a all of the above approach, but you have to remove every penny from that revenue stream that goes in for the regime. And then again, I realize it's complicated because that's going to create potentially a humanitarian crisis for the people of Iran. And you're asking a lot of them. But I think that if it's strictly a military conflict and we're not doing everything possible to squeeze that economy and choke it off, then I think the Iranian regime, the leadership has kind of pushed all their chips in the center, and they've decided that this is an existential thing for them, and they're not going to back off. So I think I worry about boots on the ground because it doesn't take much for that regime to create a lot of trouble.
But let's talk about the sequence of event that led us here, because infrastructure right now across at least 10 Iranian cities, including Tehran, Tabriz, Bushehr, Bandar Abbas, Chabahar, Mashhad, Trump posted on Truth Social a statement that changed the entire targeting framework for this war. He posted it just yesterday. He said, from this point forward, anytime the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, whether it be a missile, rocket, drone, or any other device or weapon, the United States will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant. Wow. Yeah, that's a tit for tat if I've ever heard one. But at this point, looks like President Trump has told reporters also about Pickaxe Mountain. He said, we'll be hitting that area pretty soon and very heavily. Simultaneously, the Washington Post reported the Pentagon is preparing plans for weeks of ground operations, is what they say. At least the plans are being presented. So when these news agencies say it's definitely going to happen, we don't know that for sure. But the plans are obviously being presented. What could those include? Special operations forces raids, infantry incursions, amphibious assaults, short-scale invasions. Everything's on the table for President Trump, as we've seen. Even people advocating to seize Kharg Island. So some sort of possession of Iranian soil could be a factor in future negotiations. That could be something that this administration wants. But meanwhile, there was a dignified transfer with President Trump standing on the tarmac and saluting 4 flag-draped transfer cases. First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25, of Iwa Beach, Hawaii. Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19 of Carrollton, Texas, Sergeant Angel Ramersad, 28 of Ozone Park, New York, and Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, 30 of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Trump said this message to the families that was very simple. He said, "We love you, we love your child. Obviously, there is a big cost to warfare, and these true heroes stood up for the call. They ran towards danger, and they'll never be forgotten." But now let me tell you what a ground operation in Iran would likely look like from the platform level, because the A-10, the Fury drone, the AI Expat, these advanced drones, even Anduril releasing the Thunder. Now, could the Thunder team up with the A-10? I mean, we look at the video of the Thunder, you see it going out front of the Apache. Well, here's something to think about. Just replace that Apache with A-10s, and you roll in that Thunder system, those drones that can release their own mini drones, and now you have the ability to protect the A-10 from anything that could be coming up and trying to hit it. So before we get to what the A-10 would actually do, I want to pop to Mike Baker real quick and ask him about the chances of this ground invasion actually happening.
What if all of a sudden 100,000 38 specials showed up across the country in dispersed locations? Do you think the free people of Iran have the ability to rise up if they had some sort of armament like that?
So I like how you went with the 38 special. It's like
it's the most simple. It's the most simple to load. Yeah, simple to load. Not a lot of training.
No, it's true. Look, we did it during World War II with the French resistance. We actually designed weapons that were, as simple as they could possibly be, and then got them through the French resistance. You know what? They've talked about the sort of the Kurdish potential, the Kurdish insurgency, and there have been a number of interesting skirmishes up along the Iran-Iraq border, up in that area. But you're not talking about a large group right there. And you're also talking about the Kurds. You have to remember, I think, they've got an interesting love-hate relationship with the U.S., right? Because in their minds, we've let them down, and we have let them down over the years. And so that's a complicated relationship. But look, however it happens, and you do hear this, we have to arm the Iranian citizens in order to allow them to have something resembling a level playing field with the IRGC and the besieged militia and the others.
So it's great to hear from Mike on that, but now let's talk about what would happen with the actual engagements themselves. So with the A-10 going in, what would be the number one goal of that? Well, the big goal would be for it to operate with JTACs, Joint Terminal Air Controllers. These are the guys on the ground that are going to be relaying information to the A-10 pilot, making sure they know where the enemy is and where they know friendlies are. So when you first show up to a troops in contact situation, this is what I learned in Afghanistan. The first thing you do is you understand where the friendlies are. You make sure you know where they're at, and then you know what they're targeting. And it's kind of ironic as well, when you actually look at this image of these tubes blowing up, they look like mortar tubes. I actually targeted an Iranian team that was in Afghanistan carrying tubes just like this. So it's kind of ironic to see this, and it also shows the proxy forces of Iran, how deep those go. But the A-10 would be the perfect counter-assaulter to take this on. Counter-assaulter, I'm pretty sure that's a word. But the A-10 would likely be at the tip of the spear, dual high-mounted engines positioned to take a hit independently without losing the aircraft, and triple redundant flight control systems that mean it can absorb punishment that would destroy any other platform, and it would be able to stay on station. We saw it take a pounding when it came to the Wizzo rescue, and then it returned the pounding to the IRGC, and then the pilot still made it back to the Persian Gulf and was able to eject. That's how capable this thing is, soaking up a lot of small arms fire. Is just wild. The ability of this thing to do it is incredible. It's not just a useful aircraft, this is the multi-tool of aircrafts. And the mission of the A-10 has been going on for decades. Now, there's a lot of people that say a ground invasion is a bad idea, some that say a ground invasion is necessary, but here's the one thing that I do know. You can't necessarily win a war fully without using all aspects of the military. That means Marines, Army, Air Force, everybody working together, and the A-10 is kind of the perfect platform to team up if a ground invasion does go down. And then remember, the A-10 can also team up with CCAs. It has the ability to join a link, talk to the different aircraft in the theater. It can also carry AIM-9Xs itself. But here's a cool advantage that I want you guys to think of. So not only the Thunder system that we talked about earlier, but think about the Fury, the Anduril Fury drone teaming up with the A-10. Because then it has air cover from above, And that Anduril Fury drone could strike down anything coming in. Maybe Iran gets a little bit handsy. They release one of their Su-24s or another one of their, maybe they have a hidden F-14. I know there's a snowball's chance in hell of them trying to do that at this point. The fighter pilots in the region have probably fled the country if they could, or they're all turned into drone operators. But if you have AIM-120s up above those A-10s, or even AIM-120s that are teamed up with F-15Es, F-16s, AIM-120s on that Anduril Fury drone, since we've seen recently that it can now launch AIM-120s, you just have a massive capability. But the A-10, to me, that's the trigger. It's a combination that is a winning combination, and it's always been there for ground forces. So should this go down, this will likely be the highest requested aircraft from every ground forces commander in the region, even if it's just advisory forces from the US going in to counter Iran. But here's the honesty check. Iran is degraded. It's not disarmed. The International Institute for Strategic Studies estimates Iran fields approximately 570,000 active duty troops and 350,000 reservists. And they're backed by the different proxy warfare tactics that we've seen them use over the last few weeks. And here's another thing. They're pros at IEDs. They love using IEDs. They taught the different nefarious insurgents in Iraq and Afghanistan how to use IEDs. So again, that would be their bread and butter and their go-to. Also using manpads. But this is probably why that mouthpiece in Iran said that they're welcoming a ground invasion, because they're all demented, they're all evil geniuses when it comes to IEDs. So that would be a main reason to be extremely tactical if anything went down, and not run the ground operation like what we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, but doing something different, using new tactics, using the surgical scalpel of certain teams that can go in and make things happen without a massive amount of US boots on the ground, and then moving towards a training system, whether that's training the free people of Iran, the Kurds, other rebels within the country, Israel contributing to the fight, a lot of different options than just having US forces on the ground. And then think about Kharg Island, A-10s overhead of Kharg Island striking down drones. You would have to have anti-drone technology to keep Iran from bombarding that place with drones, but that technology exists. A-10s, Apaches, creating a little metal net around the island would be a necessity if any invasion of Kharg Island happens. You made it to the 40 chess strategic analysis section, my friends. So the ground invasion discussion, it's not about occupying Iran. It never was, in my opinion. A full-scale ground invasion of a country of 86 million people with 920,000 military personnel would require north of 100,000 troops, months of preparation, logistics chains that a military might not want to sustain while enforcing the blockade on Iran. But going for strategic locations and allowing certain cities to fall, and then the free people of Iran to grow from there and stand up on their own 2 feet, that's something completely different. Let me know what you think in the comments below, guys. Would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and follow me on X, follow me on Instagram, and then go to mabbook.com to check out my new book. And then go to the PDB, the President's Daily Brief with Mike Baker. I'll link to that in the description. It was really fun talking with Mike. We've got a full podcast on his channel and on my podcast channel. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.